How many people would be willing to play a game of Monopoly with real money if the banker was making up the rules, rigging the dice, stealing the money, cheating the players, and grabbing up all the properties? The answer is almost everybody. The truth is that only 1% of the world's population of over 6 billion people is controlling the other 99%. That 1% owns the world's banks and most of the world's wealth, land, and resources. So why is everybody passively cooperating with this madness? Because the wealthy 1% who write the rules have taught the other 99% to obey them and to feel powerless to change things. When people feel powerless, they cling to passive attitudes like ignorance is bliss, things aren't that bad, or let God take care of everything. Before choosing a passive attitude, remember that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Despite all the red flags, many people deny that a problem even exists. It does exist, and the good news is there are solutions. The solutions lie in knowing what the 3 biggest fears of the world's ruling families are. The first biggest fear is exposure. They have gone to great lengths to cover up their trail of crimes and to win the public's trust through their media monopolies. Without public trust, their ancestral plan for global control is doomed. Their second biggest fear is losing public support. If the public stops cooperating, their plan is guaranteed to fail. Their third biggest nightmare is organized resistance by an informed and fearless public. The ruling families know from past experience that the will of the people can defeat all their military and monetary might. Vietnam is a perfect example. There is no doubt whatsoever that these ruling families can be totally defeated by turning their 3 worst fears into a reality. Solution number 1 is exposing the ruling families and their generations of horrific crimes against humanity. The most powerful form of advertising is word of mouth. Share information, talk about it, name names, recommend books, videos, and websites. Form your own study group and solutions group. Design a web page, show videos, films, and DVDs. Raise money, give money, organize, lobby, email, and do whatever you can to stop the madness. Millions of people around the world who protested the invasion of Iraq learned a hard lesson. They learned that peaceful protests don't work. Since the Committee of 300 Families created think tanks to mastermind a plan for global control, citizens must also create think tanks to mastermind a plan to stop them. Learn who the past and present members of the Committee of 300 are. At the top of the list are the royal families of Britain and Denmark, the international banking families, and the affiliated political families. Find time to research and read about the Committee of 300. Dig beneath the hype and propaganda, connect the dots, and share your information. The second solution for ending the madness is to take back control over your own money. Right now, your money is in the hands of the ruling families who own all of the world's banks, including the privatized central banks. How did they get to be so powerful? It started with the very first banks. In the beginning, banks were a safe place for people to store their gold. When the bankers discovered that people left most of their gold in the bank for safekeeping, they started lending out the gold that didn't belong to them and charging interest on it. Soon, kings and royalty were borrowing gold from the bankers to finance wars. Since wars were extremely good for business, the bankers started stirring up conflicts that led to more wars. Then they lent money out to both sides of the wars and collected huge interest rates. Eventually, the bankers got so rich that they built banks all over the world. They made millions in interest just by loaning out other people's money that didn't belong to them. They bought mansions and fancy clothes and hosted extravagant parties. The royal families of Europe became the banksters' biggest customers and rewarded them with high society titles like Lord and Baron and Sir. Using their money and royal influence, the banksters changed the laws of nations so they could put the world's central banks, mints, and money supply into private hands, their private hands. Out of every $1,000 that each of their customers deposited in their banks, they kept only $100 on hand. They took the rest of their customers' money and made loans with it, invested it, and started up other businesses, like the steel business to create rails for their railway companies, to transport oil for their oil companies. Pretty soon, the banksters' new businesses grew into giant corporations. Those giant corporations turned the world's oceans, lakes, rivers, air, and soil into corporate toilets. When profits from all their oil, mining, and drug company monopolies soared, the banksters became the world's richest men, but their greed had no limits. They wanted to own the entire world, so they put their heads together and came up with an ingenious scheme to take control of all of the world's money and riches. Whoever owns all of the world's money, they said, owns the world. Using their media corporations, they launched a gigantic advertising campaign. They told people they no longer had to save up their money and wait for all the things they wanted in life. They could have everything they ever dreamed of right now. All they needed was a shiny plastic card. People rushed to fill up their wallets with shiny plastic cards instead of money. Like lottery winners, they went on drunken buying sprees and bought everything in sight, all the things they couldn't afford. Nobody even noticed when their hard-earned paychecks were automatically deposited in the bank without ever being cashed. Suddenly, people's bills, fines, taxes, and purchases were automatically deleted from their accounts, and paying by check quickly became unfashionable. Eventually, money was phased out altogether and replaced with units of credit, which were really nothing more than numbers on a computer screen. The next thing the banksters did was replace people's plastic cards with their newest invention, barcode tattoos. These barcode tattoos contained all of a person's private credit information and could be invisibly tattooed onto people's wrists. Since having a wrist tattoo was like having an invisible debit card, and since nobody could steal it from you, everybody rushed to get one. All people had to do to buy whatever they wanted in life was scan their wrist tattoo over a scanner, and so the power for people to buy their most basic necessities in life fell completely into the hands of the banksters.